confidentiality reasons, I end up taking a subject and products that I don't work on for paid money and doing some experimentation with them. And that's what I'm doing today, sharing some results with you on a wine beer segmentation study. I had heard about a month ago that wine and beer were battling it out in North America, and I was wondering why. So let's go through quickly an agenda. So we did a segmentation study on American drinking habits, and from that landscape, from a product positioning point of view, we ran two studies. We looked at Gen Pop, and then we looked at Millennials, and then we tied in social media data in three ways. We scraped data of respondents during the survey. We asked questions that the respondents gave self-reported social media behavior. And the third is we did a narrative review to give some qualitative deep dive information that you generally don't get within a quantitative study. It's an exciting time in research right now. A lot of things are coalescing and coming together. You know, mobile research is so hot, and we'll see some of that in this study. Google has entered the consumer survey space, and I think that just means that we've just entered the golden age of research. Facebook's there. And we're not used to be at the person level, at the individual level, that are now really moving into the corporation and MR space. So it's a time that we thought was coming about 5 years ago, and I think we've just reached that inflection point. So and we'll be talking about a lot of that today during this webinar. So right now and for this past decade, beer and wine are battling for consumers for drinking preference. Beer consumption has decreased every subsequent year since 2009, but wine sales and volume sold in the U.S. have been increasing every year for the past 18 years. And the real surprising figure here is this: the U.S. is targeting to increase wine consumption to 13 liters per adult by 2015, up from 9 liters in 2009, which means we're drinking a lot more wine. What's kind of crazy, however, is that in the U.S. in 2010, wine's ad spend was only $80 million, but beer's ad spend, even though it dipped a little, was still $1.25 billion. And despite the difference in this ad spend, beer and wine are about selling the same, and you can see in these numbers below the real battle that's going on. So in 2003, the beer was about 10 percentage points from wine. In 2005, wine actually outsold beer. And then in 2011, and then they stayed kind of even, wine dropping a little bit below beer. In 2011, the XY graph, they crossed again. And during that same time period, hard liquor, spirits, have remained relatively flat, about 20 to 25% for each year. So that's the kind of landscape, the backdrop that we're working with when we're doing the segmentation data. So we ran two surveys to look at alcohol preference and see if we could tease out why this battle is going on between beer and wine and why wine is winning. So the first study that we did was Gen Pop, and then the second one was Millennials, and we'll talk about that in a minute. For the Gen Pop, we saw that about 80% were open to alcohol, and 20% were alcohol abstainers, and so we kind of removed them from the data set. We screened them out at the beginning. Of those who are open to alcohol, of course, more men than women. That's not a surprise. The surprise is that basically most of us drink, and most of us are regular drinkers. And the surprise to me was I thought it was going to be the 21 to 34-year-olds who were drinking the most. Actually, it's not. It's my age group. I'm 45. It's the 35 to 54-year-olds that are drinking the most, and within the last 24 hours had a drink. And, interestingly also, I always thought, alcohol consumption was increased with lower socioeconomic status, but actually that is not the case. It is a luxury item, so now it makes sense that 73% of respondents with at least some graduate school experience had a drink in the past week compared to those who had a high school degree. So the study we did was on Toluna Quick Surveys, which is a do-it-yourself tool. And I'm not going to give a big plug, because this isn't about giving a big plug, but I love this tool, and I do quite a lot of research on this tool. And the reason why is it has sophisticated question logic. It's all drag and drop. I can wait. I can wait my sample to be net rep, and that is just no other tool can do it. That's DIY, and I love it. And I can run a study, and I can run it very fast against Toluna channel. And, for example, the Gen Pop study that we're talking about right now took me about 6 hours from the moment that I opened the tool to write the first question to when my data set was complete took 6 hours. And for the second study, the one focused on millennials, 21 to 34-year-olds, it only took me 18 hours, which, is kind of amazing for such a segmented study. It was really, that's the reason why I love the tool. It's quick and fast and easy and gives me good data that's already weighted. So let's go back to the drinking habit thing. So our current American drinking habits weighted data, 21 to 65-year-olds, because this is that Gen Pop study. And we looked at exclusivity of alcohol preference over experimentation or choice. So we see that exclusive wine drinkers are 27%, beer is 32%, so there's a bit of a split there. But it's made up in the folks who drink beer, wine, and spirits in different measures when they're out socially drinking. And the one thing we know about alcohol drinking is it's the social experience. And social experience, as we'll see in the segmentation study, had a lot to do with what liquor was preferred, wine, beer, or spirits. So looking at, though, the 21 to 24-year-olds against the 25 to 34-year-olds, we focused on that in the Gen Pop study, and we found some interesting pieces of information. That wine preference increases by age. Light drinks like hard cider decrease, but right now, hard cider in the past 2 years is hard cider is like an apple-flavored alcohol-based drink. Hard cider is skyrocketing in terms of sales. And those who split between beer and liquor dropped by 10 percentage points from age group 21 to 24 to 25 to 34, and beer drinking decreases. So then we ran the second study because we wanted to find out, well, why? So this looked more in depth at drinkers 21 to 34-year-olds, and that really becomes the millennials of beer, wine, and spirits. And millennials are participating in drinking behavior. We see that, and the younger ages are still experimenting, and we'll see that in the data, with settling on the preference of the type of alcohol to drink. So they're not just wine drinkers or beer drinkers. They're drinking beer and wine and other spirits. And we did a large survey and we looked at behaviors and attitudes, general lifestyle behaviors and attitudes and values. And we did this in order to identify the key motivators that define and drive propensity towards favoring one type of alcohol over another. And as I said in the beginning, the experiment was to combine multiple data streams to see if segmentation is enhanced with social media data. So we looked at three different things. We looked at self-reported behavior on Facebook. We did the actual traditional survey, self-reported behavior on Facebook and Twitter. We did Twitter and Facebook scraping, and then we also looked at Twitter for qualitative information to round out the segmentation study after we completed the segmentation. So we'll see what that turns out like. So let's talk about first what's a millennial. I'm always kind of fascinated by how we divide ourselves up by age generation. I've never really felt like I'm a Gen X person, and I never really felt like I'm a baby boomer. I'm kind of on that cusp. But, people do in the United States really kind of identify with the generation that they've been placed in. So a millennial is somebody who's been born between 1982 and 2000. And so for our focus, we looked at folks who were born during or before 1990, since the legal drinking age is 21-year-olds. So we took anyone who was younger than 21 out of the we screened them out of the data out of the survey. And those between 30 and 34-year-olds could be considered Gen Xers. These date ranges are fascinating to me, and another reason is that a lot of people don't agree on them. So where the start and stops are. But the cool thing in why social media data, bringing it into the studies, is important on millennials is that millennials were the first to grow up with computers in their homes. They have created their profiles on social networking sites. 79% send one or more text messages on a daily basis. And we know that between 18 and 24 in the United States, that the average text messages that are being sent is just increasing pretty much on quarter by quarter. And I saw a study recently that said 50 text messages a day, which is definitely not part of my behavior coming from Gen X. So it's become computer use and just living with the internet in their lives is an organic part of a millennial's life. So millennials were surveyed online about their drinking attitudes and behaviors, and we took, we figured out who was close to drinking and then screened them out. And then we asked the rest of the questions to those who were open to drinking. And we saw that their numbers pretty much correlated with the Gen Pop study. I think it's hilarious that 3% couldn't remember their last drink. My guess is that 3% last drink was in the last 24 hours. And then, again, we weighted to census rep based on gender, age, region, income. And those targets were set to balance the sample so that we could ensure adequate representation across demographics. This is really critical, and this is something that's missed on DIY tools. It's really important to weight your data to census rep, and it's built into the Toluna Quick survey tool. It's not another, so if you're doing it on another DIY tool, it really would make sense to export that data out and run a weighting algorithm, because if not, what you're doing is you're actually just finding out the attitudes, beliefs, and answers from folks who answered the survey and not from those who are your population under test. So what kind of survey questions did we ask? In both surveys, we asked demographics, type of alcohol preferences, self-reported behaviors around alcohol, attitudes towards drinking, lifestyle and media habits. And here you can kind of just see a screen scrape of some of the questions that we asked. And then we did the social media research component. So during the survey, respondents were asked to check their Facebook pages and parse the responses into 3 categories: sociality statistics, how many friends they had, how often they were on their Facebook page, discussions of alcohol usage, and discussions with brand mentions, and uploaded photos. We looked at frequency of posting, fixed attributes, how many happy birthdays they received in their Facebook page on Facebook, and we also asked them about the Twitter behavior. And what was kind of really great is that we saw that 53% of those open to alcohol, 351 respondents, agreed to this Facebook data gathering, that they were open to allowing us to use that information to get to our research objective. So what kind of social media data attributes are available? Now, this list is absolutely not comprehensive, but some of it is pretty interesting. I'd like to go through it. For demographics, we definitely gather that within the traditional survey. But in addition to that, we also can use those as quality checks against the panelist information. So that just improves the quality and gives us a better understanding of who our panelist and respondent is. sociality statistics that we talked about, number of friends, number of posts per day, comment post ratio, number of happy birthdays, different types of discussions that go on. Then also just discussions of alcohol users and brand mentions. A previous study I read using Facebook data was interesting is that chief information officers 30% of the time talk about alcohol. That's like their favorite thing to talk about on their Facebook pages if they have Facebook pages. So that we definitely can pick up segmentation information based on job, description, age, gender, and which allows us to inform better ideas and make better predictions about future behavior that we can share with our clients. Available but not yet used is, information about who they are, their personal identifying information, and we'll talk more about that when we look at the qualitative data. And then structured data available. We have counts on the friend list, types of friends, which pages they like, how often the user is online, how many friends of the response are online, RSVP events. And, I'm focusing on Facebook here just as an example, but really Twitter has very similar capabilities and data elements that are just, mapped in a different way. And then all that just sheer textual data available, which is my area of expertise that I absolutely love, that can then be parsed using text analytic techniques and turned into structured data and then become part of a segmentation study and augments traditional research. So some results and implications. So some demographics that we gathered that assist in segmentation, occupation, for example, and it wouldn't be surprising given that it's 21 to 34-year-olds. For millennials, most of the folks are students. Makes sense. And I love the primary grocery shopping responsibility because, we can see that females definitely are more primary grocery shopping responsible, but males as well. And it just kind of surprised me that, and I think if you asked my husband and I the same question, we would both say we were the primary grocery shopping responsible person in the household. So that was a fun question. It needs more cognitive testing to really tease out what we're talking about here. And then also whether or not they're participating in a significant relationship, no relationship, and, if they had children, that was also very important. So some kind of now into the hard facts. Millennials say drinking is a way to unwind with friends, but at the end of the day, that was the top reason why they drank. The strongest drivers for drinking wine is gender-specific location, grocery store shopping, relationship, and that reason of relaxation. The strongest driver against beer drinking was its taste, and alcohol consideration was not an essential consideration for most drinkers. And then we used the predictive question, what is your preference, your drinking preference over the past year? Did you drink less beer or more wine than in years past? And we can see here that I've been drinking less beer and more wine was higher than I've been drinking more beer and less wine. And then most people are saying I've been drinking the same amount in years past. So we use that in order to drive the segmentation. So let's talk about parsing and associating of the social media data. So this study was the augmentation using a traditional survey instrument, an online survey, plus social media data pushed together, merged together in order to get more value. We didn't use just social media data, and that's probably not a wise thing to do because with just social media data, it's difficult to know who your sample is. And your interpretation of that text data is difficult to do in a way that is where the accuracy and the precision is high enough for you to base predictive decisions on. But it helps augment, definitely helped augment, and we'll see in the next few slides how that happens. So the parsing was key-driven. We looked at beer, wine, drinking, bar, partying, house partying. We took a brand list that, of 250 different alcohol brands, and we used that as a dictionary to help identify and annotate. So we really used what's called a shallow method of text analytics. We didn't do really like a deep natural language processing. We were really looking for keywords. We looked at Twitter and Facebook conversations, then processed them into what is called a corpus, and then turn that corpus into some structured attributes on whether or not they were talking about drinking or bar behavior as part of their social media responses. And then we also looked at text to document as narratives, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. So the segmentation approach, so now that we have the structured data set, with social media behavior and data set, and behavior and attitudes, plus the traditional survey responses, we did an exploratory factor analysis and then a cluster analysis, just like a regular segmentation study. Of course, only the open drinking population was included. And, the 21 to 34-year-olds were identified as that target population because correlation was higher, that older drinkers are stuck in their ways. They didn't switch as often. And it might be too late to convert those who have switched, if we were doing this for a specific client. And the goal of the segmentation exercise was really to identify the factors that assisted in the switching away from beer drinking, at least partially. So what came out of that? So we saw these factors of all of the 60-plus data items that we had: gender, age, education, income, job, kind of all correlated together. Relationship status was big. Parenthood was very key, and we'll see that in a minute. Main consumption, location, where they drank, and how much it cost, why they drank, importance of taste, whether they're an early or late adopter in terms of new products that come out, and both alcohol and then also just in general, media consumption, how much TV they watch, how much internet do they have an iPad, all of that kind of stuff. Facebook friends, the count of Facebook friends, how much sociality is going on with them on a daily basis, posting behavior, discussion of alcohol, discussions of brands on their social media data, and also whether they were considered switching from beer, which makes sense. So 6 segments emerged from this cluster analysis, and I'm not going to go into all of them because that would take us probably through the hour and then to the next. I'm going to focus on one. I'm going to focus on segment 6. Moms at home relaxing, because this was really a strong segment. And then we also have the qualitative narrative at the end that we can look at. So moms at home relaxing. The gender is female. They're 25 to 34-year-olds, so we really didn't see this in the 21 to 24-year-old age range. They were stay-at-home. They were married. They were parents with little kids. Their main consumption were at home. They were consuming their alcohol at home, which is interesting, or at restaurants, but not really bars. The reason they drank is to relax. The importance of taste was very important to them. They were early or late adopters. They thought of themselves as late adopters, that they were not open to trying the new thing immediately, but they had high media consumption. And to them, it's interesting to me, being 45, that, social media to me is like the new thing, right? Even though, because I've lived a long time and it's only been in my life for 25%. But for their lives, it's been there 50%. And so it's not something that's an early adopter. To them, they can be a late adopter into Facebook now. And that's high for them. And happy birthdays, that was interesting. Happy birthdays are important to them. The number of happy birthdays that they get on their Facebook page that has meaning and relevance to them. Their posting behavior is high. I mean, they like to post, and they post on a daily basis. They didn't discuss alcohol very much on their page. It wasn't something that in their social media life, just what wasn't coming up, other topics were. They did discuss brands, and not alcohol brands, but brands in general. brands are important to them. And, the switching from beer question is kind of a no-brainer. So now we're going to do a complete switch here, and we're going to talk about a narrative experience. So that's what the segmentation that we just saw came out of a quantitative analysis. And then in addition to that quantitative analysis that we just saw, there was also a qualitative analysis. So let's dig deep. Let's do a deep dive into segment 6, moms relaxing at home. And so what we did is we did a search within Twitter. Twitter is great because it's publicly available data. It's also one of the downsides is that Twitter doesn't save a lot of data. So you can get about 2 weeks worth of data, and then the rest of it is no longer available to you. And you'll see that I've blacked out some information on the next few slides. And the reason why I did that is, it's publicly available, but for this kind of event, we really have a responsibility to protect identity, protect personal identifying information. And I think it's really important for us as researchers to follow the CASRO social media guidelines that were led by Peter Mila. And so I've tried very hard to, and especially in slides that I'm showing publicly, to sort of folks over the internet, to parse that information out. So we looked at the search criteria. We looked at glasses of wine, home or kids, or home activity, and it was greater than these terms, but the full list was quite long. And so it came up with 137 new tweets. And the new tweets were about basically, excuse me for this second. Sorry, my voice is giving out. These new tweets were about for about a week's worth of data. So focusing on this first tweet, and I'm going to, I apologize for using some swear words here, and these are self-reported, self-given swear words from our participants on folks on social media. But kids kicked my ass, then yoga kicked my ass, home, comedy TV, glass of wine, coziness, bed, down and out. Hopefully tomorrow cheers me up. So what we're going to do is we're going to dig into this woman right here and see what at least her Twitter persona life looks like, and if there's anything that can give us more insight into her segment. So remember her, kids kicked my ass? Well, if you look into her page, you can see that she lives in Washington, D.C. She's not a big tweeter. 582 tweets is not a ton of tweets. She's not following very many people. There aren't that many people following her. And these are her friends. It's obvious if you look at these lists that these are definitely her friends. And what's kind of amazing is that this is all, publicly available, that we can look at this. But what I really wanted to highlight here is that when I looked at her favorites, she only favored 2 items here. And one of them is Behringer Vineyards. So that's crazy. I mean, how hilarious is that? It's just so on segment for us in terms of it's just like triangulating into an analytic segmentation viewpoint. Here she's actually, of the small amount of posting that she's doing, she is favoriting Behringer Vineyards. And then so what we did is we said, okay, we're going to take her and we're going to do a search on her, and if you do a search and you do it programmatically, this is Twitter's oh-so-friendly return. It's really ugly. It's in a format called JSON. And this is what it looks like if you do it in a browser. But generally, you'll do it into an analytic tool. And so that data, however, that comes, even though it's ugly, comes back is really important. It gives us some significantly important information. You can see the create date, like when that post was made, who it was from. You can see down here the source. So we can see that actually posting was coming from an iPhone on this specific application and what that text was. what the actual text was. And there's some other information that's in here that's pretty fascinating too. But for this qualitative narrative, these are key fields for us. And so, you know, it's ugly data to pull off. So there's lots of different editors and lots of different analytic tools. You don't need to be a programmer to actually use these tools that are available. And so now let's just talk through what that narrative looks like. So now here we're going to start, we're going to do like the day in the life of, but we're going to do actually 3 or 4 days of this specific person. Total caffeine addiction happened in my life right now. Haven't had coffee all day, and it's headache city right now and needs some. So now we can kind of get a fuller picture of her. Similar to me, caffeine addiction for sure. She's hasn't had coffee. She loves the Steelers. Steelers is a brand reference. Here, on the next day, we see that she's done a photo upload of the Hollywood Insider of a specific TV show that she likes, and then without any comment. So that was important. She did it from her iPhone. She found it, and then her iPhone just easily allowed her to post it to her Twitter page. She's worried about the holiday season shopping. She's doing a celebrity mention in the next post, and she's worried about ages. And then we see that the source has changed here, and we are able to see that this is something that somebody has done to her, a friend, because you can see some back and forth that. And it's doing a brand reference with, I have no idea how to pronounce it, but I actually buy this stuff, and I love it. It's this chili sauce, and it's really, really spicy, and it's Sri Raka, I think is what it's called. And then there is a URL to this image itself. And then different source saying, nope, I haven't gotten that yet. And then this is a little bit afterwards. She must have been reading something about children. It's really giving you a feel for the type of person who fits into your segment. And if we're doing one, but if you did 50 of these, all with that same segmentation that fit within segment 6, you know, moms relaxing at home, what we end up getting is a really clear picture of who these women are, why they're switching, what the purchase intents are. And then we can take this information and do survey number 3. Is it, and this is what we're doing right now, is it that they can shop within the grocery store, the hypothesis right now, and write me an email if you care about the final result. Is the hypothesis is that they can shop it at the grocery store, because it's definitely what they are. They're primary grocery shoppers. They can buy it. They can take it home. It's more socially acceptable to buy a bottle of wine, perhaps, than a 6-pack or a 12-pack of beer. Fits into just the cart, and because she's not drinking it at the bar, she might be drinking it at restaurants. She's definitely not drinking at the bar, so she's taking it home and drinking. And it just fits within her lifestyle better. How does that look at the grocery store? And we are able to ask that question because we're doing these qualitative deep dives of this one specific narrative, but if we did 50 of them, we'd get 50 times this kind of information. And then here's Thursday's narrative, the end of Thursday narrative, and now we're starting to see, references to the Obama rally, Jay-Z, another celebrity, but also a brand reference. And crazily, I read that in 1 minute, leading on the election day, there were over 300,000 tweets done just of the election itself. So, and our mom here actually gave us that same kind of, she joined that cluster. And then a final picture of her Monday night before Election Day. I'm stressed and tired. Again, another piece of information for us for that follow-up survey, which we saw in a number of her posts. Earlier, we saw it come out into the traditional survey that it's a relaxer. that she's drinking wine to relax, and she's switching from beer to wine. So why is this interesting? Well, if I were a beer manufacturer, I would be using this information and really interested into that third study as we slowly work through these segmentations to really understand those drivers, what she's putting in her shopping cart, the social reasons of what she's putting in that shopping cart, and what she's doing at home. And these narratives give us that kind of explanation. So, any questions for me? Here's all my information. Please, I'm definitely in the social media world, definitely in the text analytics world. Love to correspond. So here's my Twitter name, so you can read all of my Twitter posts and create a narrative about me. Like me, friend me on Facebook, and then also I love to be linked into people on LinkedIn because I read on a daily basis what's going on in the industry, but also what's going on in the professional world around me, especially folks who would attend such a wonderful event as these ARF webinars. So I thank ARF and Kelly, and I'm open for questions now.
There's some questions coming to you in the chat box.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see them coming up right now. Hold on for just a second. Hold on, guys. It's feeling the scroller for me. They're coming in. I wonder if wine sales are related to aging boomers. So we didn't see an increase in wine in the traditional study that we did on the Gen Pop. We didn't see an increase of wine drinking for boomers and above. So like I said, I'm Gen X, but I'm also like kind of boomer. I'm like on the cusp. I'm 45. As an aside, I think it was really hard for me. This is a personal fact, and you may or may not care, but it was really hard for me to move from the 35 to 44-year-old segment up to the 45 to 54-year-old segment. For some reason, because I'm in market research and I work with these demographics, that was terrible for me. We did not see in that 45 to 54-year-old segment and the 55-plus segment, we did not see an increase or change of liquor preferences as we did with the youngers, the millennials. Hold on for a second. Here, I'm just looking at the questions. Which data came from survey responses linking their social account and which from social scraping? That is a very good question. It's a very detailed question, and I'll have to actually, David, if you could write me an email, I can send that to you. A lot of the Facebook questions at the end were about that, and from social scraping, we actually, there were just a couple of questions that came from social scraping. And the questions is probably the wrong, is imprecise. A couple of estimates came from social scraping. And then, same question. And then we have, were there significant differences between drinkers on social and those not? I did not do that analysis, so that would be interesting to do. There is the research on that woman is very in-depth. How many of these in-depth case studies you conduct to get a well-rounded consumer profile? And the answer is, it depends. It depends on what your client is looking for. I think the point of that qualitative narrative is that there's a lot of public data available to you. A lot of people use social media monitoring tools to really look at brand references and doing it quantitatively. But my point is that in Twitter, on Facebook brand pages, there's a lot of public conversations going on in which you can drill into a specific person, see what their kind of a day in the life is like. And we picked one, but there were, I think, 100-plus conversations over a week that we could have drilled into. And it's just a rich seam of additional information that you can look at and and help you to drive your next traditional study, to give more, help you tell the story that has come out in your traditional survey research to your client, to make it real, to make it so that the client can grasp it, understand it, and allow them to make those predictive questions going forward. So definitely segment 6, women drinking wine at home. This is something, if my client was a beer manufacturer, this would be a segment that, by painting that picture of who this woman is, makes that segment come alive rather than giving just a crosstab. And that's the reason for this type of research. What is the rate of acceptance, incentives, and process of getting survey participants to collect Facebook, Twitter conversations? And right now I don't have enough information about that because I've not done enough research on it. So we had 53% on this study say, yeah, this is no problem. But overall, I don't know, and for various reasons, I've not looked into that. But the 2013 will be my year of definitely of looking into that and really focusing on that question. Absolutely. Within the millennial group looked at, were there noticeable differences between younger and older millennials? Absolutely, there were. And if you remember, just because of the age breaks and because I like to work within the kind of like the standard age breaks, I threw in 32, 33, and 34 in there, even though they weren't considered millennials, or some weren't considered millennials. We definitely saw that. We saw that as millennials aged, their experimentation lessened and their preferences towards a specific type of liquor solidified, if that's a word, so that if that word works for you. Do Gen Y consumers that are changing from beer to wine have brand preferences? Don't know. Beautiful question, wonderful question, really an important question to look at. Or is it only a preference between white and red? Again, don't know the answers to those either. Fascinating, though, and definitely for survey 3 and 4, because I love this. I love, actually, this data set. I think there's a rich amount of information and definitely enough, it's kind of an experiment, right? An experiment to see what we can get out of combining these different data sources, looking at these different segments, and then really using millennial social media data, because it's such an organic part of their life, to help round out traditional survey research. So those are 2 really perfect questions for study number 3. And I think that is the last question. I think I've gone through